Many years ago, a friend of mine bought a car. It was a Riley 1500. Really nice car. I think Wolseley made a version as well. Bit of an old lady's car in some ways, but wood dashboard, leather seats, really nice. I always liked the Riley 1500. And when he bought it, I must admit I was pretty envious. He brought it round to show me. He was over the moon with it, absolutely over the moon. It was second hand, but it was in showroom condition. It was immaculate. Whoever had owned it had really looked after it for all its life, I would imagine. Beautiful car. He brought it round to show me. The day he bought it, he actually brought it round to show me. He was that happy with it. I had a drive. We went round the block. Sunny afternoon it was, nice day. And I fell in love with it. It was me. I was only young, and really, as I say, it was an old person's car, really. But it was beautiful. I'd always wanted one. And he bought this thing, low mileage, incredibly low mileage. I forget what it was, but it was low mileage. And the price was amazing. I said to him, what have you done? How on earth did you get it at that sort of price? Again, I forget what it was. Something like £100 way back then, which was very, very cheap for a showroom condition, really low mileage car like that. He was over the moon. Off he went. He went home after I'd had a drive round. Didn't see him for a week. And he phoned me about a week later. And I said, how's the car? And he said, I don't want it. I'm going to sell it. Sell it? I said, what do you mean you're going to sell it? You've only had it a week. What's wrong with it? Oh, no, nothing wrong with it, he said. Nothing wrong at all. Well, I didn't believe him. You don't buy a car like that and then a week later say you're going to sell it because there's nothing wrong with it. I said, what is it? Is it the engine? What is it? The gearbox? What trouble is it? No. He said, no, it's perfect. The car is perfect. I said, look, come on, there's obviously something wrong with the car. I'm your friend, you can tell me. And he said, there is nothing wrong with the car. He was adamant. So I said, all right, you're going to sell it, I'll buy it. And he said, no, you don't want it. So I said, so there is something wrong with it. You wouldn't sell it to me because you know it's got a problem. No, he said, no, you can buy it. If you want it, you can buy it. I said, great, right, how much? What I paid for it. And I said, are you sure you're not going to make a profit? He said, no, you're a friend. I just want to get rid of the car. I don't want it in my driveway. I don't want it in my garage. I want it out of my way, gone. So I just said one last time, are you sure there's nothing wrong with it? He said, nothing wrong at all with the car. Okay, fair enough, take his word for it. I said, I'll have it. I'll arrange the insurance company. I said, I'll give them a ring on the phone tomorrow and I'll come round with the cash. He gave the car details, the number, the registration number and everything. Following day, I phoned the insurance company, got it all sorted out, went round to see him with the cash. He gave me the logbook and the keys. Job done. I drove it home and now I was over the moon. It was beautiful. I kept thinking, what am I listening? Is that something wrong with the engine? No. Is that suspension all right? Is the gearbox all right? Nothing wrong with it at all. I took it for quite a drive actually that day. I drove all round the place. I must have done 50 or 60 miles in it. No problems whatsoever. I saw him a few days later and he asked me how the car was. I said, yeah, it's fine, no problems. And I said, come on, now you can tell me, why did you sell it to me? You can tell me now, the deal's done, it's my car, it's perfect. He said, you're going to laugh at me. I said, I won't laugh. I did actually. I said, go on, I won't laugh, I promise, promise you. He said, it's haunted. I said, oh, come on. I said, I've heard of haunted houses, haunted castles, a haunted car. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, I haven't seen any ghosts in it. Well, what are you on about? He said, there is. There's a passenger. A passenger? I said, I don't know what you're talking about, a passenger. He said, sitting on the back seat of the car, there is a chap. He sits there in the middle, on the back seat. I said, okay, well, I haven't seen him. I wonder whether he was all right, sort of up here. I'd known him for years and he was fine, perfectly mentally stable. And I did think he'd been so happy with the car and then suddenly I want to sell it, get rid of it, I just don't want it. So it was rather odd. And I wondered whether he had seen something in the back. I said, "Look, was it a trick of the light or the sun?" Or he said, "No, it's only at night." "Ah, only at night." I said, "It's probably shadows, car headlights coming towards you, reflecting." And he said, No. There's someone sitting in the back. There's a passenger in the back of the car, only at night." And he said, "I know it's a ghost." He said, "I know you're going to laugh." He said, "I know it's a ghost because when I look round to the back seat, he's not there. He's only in the rear view mirror." He said, "I've gone round to the back. I've opened the door. He's not there. Sit in the front rear view mirror. He's there. He's got a moustache. He's quite old, an elderly gentleman, and he just sits there in the back." I left it at that. I didn't say any more. I didn't know what to say, to be honest. I drove the car during the day and it was fine. And that evening, I thought, what I'll do is I'll go out. I don't think I'd been out in it in the dark. If I had, I hadn't seen a ghost in the back seat. So that evening, it was dark. I went out for a drive. Nothing. I looked in the mirror. Nothing, no. And then suddenly, I just felt something. I don't know what it was. I just felt something. I looked in the mirror. There's this chap sitting on the back seat. Elderly chap, moustache, sitting in the middle on the back seat. So my friend had been right. It would appear that the car was haunted. I pulled over and stopped. There he was in the mirror. I turned round. He wasn't there. He was right. He wasn't there. I got out. I actually sat in the back. No one there. No one there at all. I got back in the driver's seat, looked in the mirror. There was this chap sitting there, just staring. Now, I'd seen so-called ghosts before. It was nothing new to me, so I wasn't afraid. I wasn't, what's he going to do? Is he going to attack me? I just wondered what he was doing there, what he wanted. So I asked him, I looked in the mirror and I said, "Who are you?" No response at all, just no response, nothing. So I said, "What do you want?" Nothing. No even facial expression changed. Absolutely nothing. He was just still, as in a photograph in the mirror. It wasn't a trick of the light. I knew that. Because I moved around. I moved the mirror and looked that way and he was still there. But only in the mirror, which was very odd. Nothing wrong with the mirror. Just an ordinary rear view mirror, piece of glass. Nothing strange about that. A day or two later I had to go out one evening just to see a friend of mine. I was driving along, I took the wrong turn. And I thought, what am I doing? I know the area well, I've lived it all my life, what am I doing? I turned up the wrong street. I thought, okay, I'll turn the next right, then get back onto the road. I went past the next right. Hang on, what? I've missed it. I know that road well, I missed it. I ended up in a road, I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. Nothing in the way. I'm looking round. I know this road. What am I doing here? I thought nothing of it. I thought I'd just go and do that. And I drove off to see this person. And that was that. Thought no more of it. I phoned my friend. Well, call him Kevin, shall we? I can't keep calling him my friend. I phoned Kevin. And I said, look, I want to find out a little bit of the history of this car because it's beautiful. It's showroom condition. Where'd you get it from? He said, I bought it from an elderly lady. It was advertised in the paper. I phoned her and went round and bought it. And I said, could you give me her address? And he said, well, what for? What do you want to see her for? I said, I just want to know a little bit about the car, find out, basically why it's immaculate and been looked after so well. He told me the name of the street and the number. And that was the road I'd stopped in. I didn't tell him that. I just said, okay, thanks, put the phone down. That was the road I'd driven to. I say I drove there, or had the car driven me there? It seemed very odd. I thought, no, it can't be this chap in the back that's guided me there somehow, can it? I went round to see the lady that evening. She was lovely. She opened the door. Oh, hello. I said, I'll come about the car. She said, I've sold it. Oh, I'm so sorry, I've sold it. I said, no, I know that. I said, sorry, I should have explained. I said, a friend of mine bought it. I bought it from him. And she said, well, didn't he want it? It was only a week or two ago. I said, no. I said, It wasn't really what he wanted, so he sold it to me. And I love it. And she said, are you sure? You don't want your money back, do you? I said, no, I don't want my money back. I said, I've just come to ask you about the car because it's in such lovely condition. It's been so well looked after. Oh, come in, she said, come in, I'll tell you all about the car. I should have mentioned that when I asked Kevin about the lady's address, he did ask me whether I'd seen the ghost, and I said, no, I haven't seen any ghosts in the car at all. I lied. At that stage, I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to find out what was going on. So I went into the lady's house with her. She was really nice. She said, oh, we used to keep the car in the garage, and my husband gave up driving. She said he was getting a bit doddery. His eyesight's not too good, so we decided he wouldn't drive anymore, and we put it in the garage. I said, oh, well, it's very, very clean. He obviously looked after it when he was driving. She said, oh, yes. He was always cleaning the car. Every day he was out there with a duster making sure this bit's all right and clean that bit, vacuuming everything. She said, even the engine was spotless. I said, I know, I've seen it. In the boot, it looks like a new car. And then she said to me, what he used to do, he couldn't drive it anymore because he got a little bit doddery. But what he would do in the evenings, he'd go and sit in the back seat of the car and read his book. Ah, right. I said, okay, right. So he just sat in the back reading his book in the evening. And she said, yes. She said, what it was, I like watching certain programmes on the television that he doesn't like. He likes to read his book. So he'd sit in the back of the car. And he'd sit there and breathe in the leather seats. He loved the smell of the leather seats. He'd just sit there and read his book. I wasn't sure what else to say until I saw a photograph. And I said, is that your husband? Oh, yes, she said, that's Gerald. And she got the photo and showed, that's Gerald. It was the chap that I'd seen in the back, the moustache. That was Gerald. Okay, everything was falling into place now. Gerald was the passenger in the car. I didn't know how to tell her. I couldn't say, oh, by the way, your husband Gerald, he's always in the back of the car. He goes for rides with me in the evenings, you know. I couldn't say that. She then looked a bit sad and she said, it was one evening, I had got the dinner ready. I went out to get Gerald to come in. I went out there, dinner's ready, Gerald, dinner's ready. Opened the back door of the car. She said his head was slumped forward. He passed away. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, so sorry. She said, well, he was in his favourite spot in the car. He passed away reading his book in his car. She said, what more could I ask? And I said, well, that's really sad. She said, the only regret I have is that I wish I'd been with him. I would like to have said goodbye. And I said, yeah, that's really sad. But I said, it's just nice that he was in his car. We drank our tea and she was telling me about the trips they used to go on out into the countryside. They'd have a picnic by the roadside, you know, as they used to in the old days. And she was still sad. She wished she said goodbye. I said, look, I've got the car outside. I said, why don't you come outside, sit in the back, just on your own, and say goodbye to Gerald? Oh, she said, oh, I don't know. He won't be there, will he? I said, well, I don't know. Just sit there, perhaps on your own. It's dark out there. Just imagine that he's there with you. All right, she said, all right. So we went out to the car. I opened the back door, let her in. She was in there. I could hear her talking. I closed the door. I could hear her talk. Hello, Gerald. It's a lovely man that's bought the car. He's going to look after it. He keeps it nice and clean. He's going to look after it. She's rabbiting away like this to Gerald. I couldn't see him because I wasn't obviously in the front looking in the mirror. I just wondered whether he was there. I couldn't tell. I had no way. She was hoping he was there. And then after a while, she got out of the car and she said, do you know, I feel that Gerald was there, sitting next to me. And I said, perhaps he was. You never know, do you? I'm sure he was. What do you think? I said, yeah, I think he probably was. I saw her back into her house. She was happy. She was smiling. She was beaming, not smiling. She was beaming. She was really happy. And in fact, she said to me, do come round again, won't you? I'd like to see the car now and then. I said, yes, I'll come round now and then. You can check that I'm keeping it clean. She liked that. Driving home, I looked in the back in the mirror. No Gerald. I said, Gerald, where are you? Come on, show your face, Gerald, where are you? Nothing. I reckon he'd gone. He led me to that house, or tried to, by making me drive there. I eventually got there. He wanted to say goodbye to his wife. His wish and hers came true. And the funny thing is, that evening, when she sat in the back of the car, that was Halloween.